In the summer of 1876, a drifter named Jack McCall stumbled into a noisy little saloon in the Dakota Territory. He was broke, angry, and drunk. Nobody paid much attention to him at first. He was just another face in the crowd, glaring at another man chasing luck at a poker table. But as the game went on, McCall's bitterness grew, and finally, in front of everyone, he stood up, pulled out a revolver, and shot the man in the back of the head. The room went silent, chairs tipped over, cards scattered, and people froze, while staring at a body slumped over the table. The killing alone was shocking, but what made it unforgettable was who McCall just killed. Welcome to the Smoking Sun. If you're into true crime and sometimes creepy stories that are stranger than fiction, make sure to hit that subscribe button because that's the kind of stories I tell. Now, let's get back into it. In 1876, the town of Deadwood wasn't really much of a town. It was more like a gold rush camp that exploded almost overnight. Miners had flooded the Black Hills after word spread that gold was there for the taking. And as it was back then, where gold goes, trouble always seems to follow. Miners would pop up their tents nearby. New saloons opened on every corner. The women leaned out their upstairs bedroom and invited men inside. On almost a daily occurrence, gunfights would break out on the streets, and the smell of sweat, smoke, and whiskey hung thick in the air. And the craziest part was that Deadwood wasn't even legal. It was smack dab in the middle of Indian Territory, which meant there was no law recognized by the U.S. government. There's no sheriff, no courthouse, and no jail. Justice was whatever the mob decided on that particular day. And in the middle of all that chaos, in walked Jack McCall. McCall was about 23 or 24 years old. He was born in Kentucky, but had spent his adult life drifting west. He did some buffalo hunting for a while, and then some odd jobs here and there, but nothing stuck. People described him as cross-eyed with a crooked nose and a sandy little mustache. He wasn't impressive, and he wasn't intimidating. If anything, he looked like someone trying to blend into the crowd. But he didn't want to just blend in. He wanted more. And in Deadwood, there was one man who had more than everyone else: respect. People stepped aside when the man walked by. They whispered his name, and McCall couldn't stop watching him. He was obsessed. On the night of August 1st, 1876, Jack McCall sat down at a poker table in Nut Hall and Man Saloon number 10. And across the table, staring back at him, was that man he had been quietly obsessed with. At first, McCall thought maybe this was his chance. He'd been broke for days now, and maybe his luck would finally turn. If he could hold his own at this table, maybe even beat the man everyone admired, maybe people would finally see him differently, and he can get that same respect. But luck failed to show. Hand after hand, McCall lost everything. He was sloppy, outmatched, and the more he drank, the worse it got. By the end of the night, he was flat broke, again. He shoved his chair back, ready to walk out of the saloon, when the man across the table stopped him. This man reached into his own pocket, pulled out a few coins, and handed them to McCall, and told him to go get himself some breakfast. Then he added a piece of advice that landed like a slap. He told him, "Don't set another table until you can cover your losses." Now, this was meant as kindness, but to Jack McCall, he felt humiliated. Everyone in that room had seen it. He wasn't a player. He wasn't a rival. He was a charity case. That night, McCall stumbled into the street with rage boiling in his chest as he drank even more. He kept replaying that moment over and over, how everyone had seen him being pitied like a beggar. The coins in his pocket clinked together like cruel laughter. The humiliation he felt did not go away. In fact, it had hardened to something much darker. On August 2nd, so the next day, Nuttall and Mann's saloon was packed again. McCall was already drunk when he saw the man walk in. And as usual, the man scanned the room for his favorite seat, the corner chair that let him watch every door and kept his back safe against the wall. However, this time, that seat was already taken. So he hesitated a bit and then sat down with his back to the main door. That was the one thing he always avoided, the one rule he never broke. And today, he broke it. From the bar, McCall's heart pounded. He gripped a revolver in his pocket. This was it, his chance. He convinced himself this was justice, that he was striking a blow not just for himself, but for his brother, who he had claimed had been killed by this man years earlier. Now that wasn't true. McCall never had a brother. But in his drunken mind, it was a story he told himself to make what he was about to do seem righteous. The man at the table was holding two pair, a pair of eights and a pair of aces. He looked over the cards, getting ready to play the hand out. Maybe he was about to press his luck and win the pot. Maybe he was about to lay them down and take it. Nobody would ever find out, because before the hand could finish, everything changed. That's when McCall stood up from the bar. His legs were unsteady, but his grip on the revolver was tight. He walked up behind the man, raised his gun, and fired a single shot at the back of his head. The man collapsed instantly. He was dead before the body hit the ground. His cards spilled across the table. The saloon froze, and then it erupted in chaos. People started screaming. Chairs were overturned, and men dove for cover with their hands scrambling for their own pistols. But the fight was already over. Jack McCall had killed the most famous man in the room with one cowardly shot to the back of the head. McCall bolted. He ran out the door, tried to mount a horse tied up outside, but the saddle slipped and dumped him right in the dirt. Desperate, he sprinted down the street, ducked in the butcher shop, and tried to hide. But the crowd in Deadwood wasn't about to let him get away. Within minutes, he was dragged out back in the street. They put him on trial the next day. A miners' court, hastily thrown together in a local theater. McCall made that claim that he killed the man to avenge his brother's death. The jury bought it, and after only 2 hours, they declared him not guilty. McCall walked out of Deadwood with his head held high, bragging that he killed a legend in a fair fight. But it wasn't a fair fight. Everyone knew it. And worse, the trial meant nothing. Deadwood was still technically illegal. It had no recognized government, which meant, outside of Deadwood, Jack McCall could still be tried. And that's exactly what happened. Within weeks, McCall was rearrested in Wyoming after drunkenly bragging about the killing. This time, he was hauled to Yankton, the capital of Dakota Territory. This time, the trial was official, and the jury wasted no time. Jack McCall was found guilty of murder. On March 1st, 1877, he was led to the gallows. He asked the marshal to tighten the rope. At 10:10, the trapdoor opened, and McCall dropped and became the first man legally executed in Dakota Territory. But here's the thing. Jack McCall's name isn't remembered for who he was. It's remembered for who he killed. Because the man that Jack McCall shot in the back that day was Wild Bill Hickok. Wild Bill Hickok, the gunfighter, the lawman, the scout, and the gambler. A legend of American frontier. A man who had survived countless gunfights, who always sat with his back against the wall to keep himself safe. A man whose life ended because of one mistake, one broken rule, and one coward with a revolver. Hickok's death turned into instant legend. He died holding the quote-unquote dead man's hand. His grave in Deadwood became a shrine, and his name lived on in novels, in movies, and in television. But what about Jack McCall? Well, he was buried with the noose still around his neck, and his grave was eventually lost. History doesn't remember him as a man. It remembers him as a coward who killed Wild Bill Hickok. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the like button and consider subscribing to The Smoking Sun for more stories like this one. And if you're already subscribed, make sure you click that notification bell and set it to all. That way you won't miss any of my uploads. Thanks for watching, and as always, see you next time.